Hey, welcome today to the Coastline podcast. This is our opportunity to share with you the stories of our church family. People with the past, people who've made mistakes, people who have regrets, people who've learned incredibly valuable life lessons. It's all about God taking people's story and redeeming it for His glory. So we're going to get honest, we're going to get real, we're going to get vulnerable, and it's going to be transparent. So join us today on this episode of our Coastline podcast.
Hi, Coastline fam, and welcome back to another episode of Coastline Connections. I'm your host, Sarah Beebe, and today we have a man that might have greeted you on a Sunday morning and taken you through that awkward time of trying to find a seat when people are worshiping and it's dark. One of our ushers, and you might recognize him because he also shared part of his story during the Freedom series. Earlier at Coastline. We have Coach Chad Colton today.
Thanks, Sarah. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure to have you. You're always such a friendly face. And I do have to say, do you know the pressure or that awkward feeling when you're walking into a church and maybe you don't go all the time and you're like, where do I go or sit? So what you do as an usher is so important.
It's awkward for me as an usher. I always joke that I'm the world's worst usher. I'm just a good greeter that's polished in it. But I was like, that's what God called in my heart to do, but I laugh because I'm like, I'm not the best usher, but I try to greet everybody with a friendly smile. And
you're a great. That's how we met, actually. You greeted us when we were walking in one day, and we just struck up conversation.
Yeah, I'm just pushing people to their seat. I'm more like, okay, do they want to find their seat? Do they want help with their seat? So. Yeah. Some ushers are really good about directing it. So I'm a work in progress. I'll put it that way.
Well, you're approachable, so thank you for that service. So before we jump into who Coach Chad is and your story and how you ended up at Coastline and the incredible things you're doing with our local sports kiddos at high schools and the coaches there, I have a couple icebreakers for you, okay?
Okay, let's go.
All right, so you're on a desert island, and you can only have 3 foods for the rest of your life.
Ooh.
3 foods, all right. What are you going to pick?
Okay, it's going to be, I definitely need to have steak. So steak would be one. I'm a huge pizza guy. Don't eat pizza a lot, but I love pizza.
Okay, so
I couldn't
what
imagine
toppings?
Pizza without. Even anything from pepperoni, jalapeno. I'm a mix, so I wouldn't be picky. Just not cheese. They need to have some more stuff, some more meat on the bone, right? And then the other one would probably be some type of an Italian dish.
So no sweets? You're going to not?
No, I'd give up the sweets as long as I could have the steak, the pizza, and some Italian. So
you're eating good on that desert island.
I don't know if it's the healthiest food, but yeah, I'll be eating good.
It's not the point.
Yep.
To eat good stuff.
It's a good question.
Okay. And finally, if you could be any animal on the planet, what would you be?
Wow, that's a tough one.
It's hard because it's not just your favorite animal.
Maybe a shark.
It's the one you want to come back at. So you want to come and be a shark.
Just because then I feel like, you're I love the ocean. I don't really have to be afraid of anything because you're the shark. So that kind of, I guess, would be, but that's, that might be one, maybe.
Shark is pretty broad, though. Let's narrow it down. What kind of shark are you going to be?
You have to be the great white, the biggest of the biggest. Let's go there. Then I'm protected. I'm like, I can take care of myself.
I love it.
That's a good question too. I've thought about that. That one's hit me before too. So yeah,
that's fun. All right, well, let's go back to meet baby Chad. You were born and partially raised in Wyoming.
That's correct.
Originally, until eventually you moved to Salt Lake City in junior high. But I want to go back to the beginning because it sounds like the earliest memories of your childhood were just not the best. And when you were born, you didn't have your biological father in the picture?
Yeah, never met my biological father. I had a stepfather in the picture at an early age. We lived in a small town in Wyoming called Evanston. 20,000 people there. My stepfather, who I thought was my father, worked in the oil fields. A really hard blue collar work. And he was an alcoholic. And we lived in a very poor part of town, lived in a trailer. And I had 2 older sisters, but the gap was about 7 and 12 years old. So they were getting into high school, junior high at this time. But he had a lot of demons that he dealt with. God really wasn't in our lives, and he was a domestic abuser. Tough to get through, no matter how many times I tell the story, because you think the pain your mom goes through. And luckily for me, God bless me, where I was such an early age, that the vision and the memories of it weren't as vivid as my older sisters had to deal with. But he was very abusive, beat my mom badly, was an alcoholic, heavy drinker, and my grandparents had to pull us out of there pull my mom and me and my sisters out of there when I was about like 6 or 7. And then my mom filed for divorce from my stepfather. But yeah, that's who I thought was my biological father. It wasn't until I was 15 that I found out that wasn't my real dad, and I'd never met my real father before.
Did you ever go on, a mission to try and track him down or find out who he was or anything like that?
It's funny. I didn't. My wife, for the longest time, we've been married over 20 years, coming up on 22. My wife would say all the time early on, like, why don't you go find your father? You don't have any desire to find him. I think as a boy, when the biological father's never been there, I can see a lot that want to go find that person. For me personally, I was like, well, he never came back for me. And there wasn't angst for that, but I was like, I never had a deep desire to go find him. I said, hey, if it's meant to be, it'll happen eventually. The deepest desire I had was to have a relationship with a male figure in my life that would be like a dad, right?
Did your grandpa fulfill that role at all?
And my grandpa did. And my grandfather was the closest thing I had to a dad until I was about 16 and he passed away from cancer. So I had to grow up very, very quick. My grandparents were unbelievable people. They gave up retirement to take care of me and my mom. And like I told you, my mom, she had a ton of health problems. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor when I was about 8 or 9, and it was malignant. Oh. So our move from Wyoming to Utah was to be closer to the University of Utah Cancer Center, which is an incredible cancer center. And at the time, I'm 48 now, so back then they were very ahead of the time with aggressive treatments to brain tumors specifically. And so that's why we moved to Salt Lake. My grandparents gave up everything to try to give me a life and take care of my mom. So my grandfather was just a saint, was an amazing man. But yeah, he filled into that role. But a lot of youth leaders, coaches, one of the big reasons I coach and I coach football is my football coach and my youth football coach filled in. There was a lot of male figures in the community that filled in when I needed it the most in junior high and high school to really make the difference. My life could have went 2 ways. Could have went down a very, very dark path. There's a lot of reasons, a lot of excuses to be able to do that, or it could have went the right way, but it only goes the right way if the right people are leading you and helping guide you and mentor you, for sure.
So let's go back to when did you say you were 8 when you learned your mom had a brain tumor?
Yes, about 8, 9 roughly. Yeah.
8 or 9. So, you're so young, and
Yes.
The only father figure in your life is someone who is not much of a father figure you want in your world. And now you're looking at the possibility of losing your mom. I mean, did you even understand the scope at that age of what your mom was facing? Did you know it was terminal?
I did, but I couldn't comprehend that at that age. So it was just so foreign to me. I just knew that she was sick, but you're a kid, you're in your bubble, trying to friends, school, but your heart went to her. I mean, my mom, I love my mom to death. She's no longer here. She's up in heaven and smiling down every day, but she was the toughest woman ever. I mean, the toughest woman for what she had to deal with, but just knew that she was in a lot of pain. Didn't know the severity, she was that close to losing her life. But she's such a fighter and yeah, so I think you just, most of the time as a kid, I think the biggest thing is you just don't want them to be in pain, right?
Yeah.
And have that hurt.
So at what point did your grandparents step in and decide to just pull you guys from Wyoming and move you to Salt Lake City?
It was probably right about 6th grade. So that
was a few years after.
Yep, a few years after, as they knew
diagnosed.
That, hey, this is getting worse and worse. And I think the doctors in Wyoming just said, hey, we can't help her anymore. And probably at that point, from everything I've gathered from talking to family members, she really didn't have any chance to live. And so the move to Salt Lake was to say, hey, let's try. They've got some test procedures, some experimental procedures they're doing at the University of Utah that they did with what they called star patients. And they were like, just like anyone would. We've all known people that have had cancer, and you get to that point where you hear a no, no, no. You're just looking for someone to say, give you one, well, we can try this, or let's try this. And that's why we made the move. And it was very tough for me. Again, going back to a kid, you're in your bubble, your world of like trying to figure out, who am I? What groups am I associated with? What, you just want to be a kid.
Especially at middle school age.
Very tough.
That's hard for anyone who's not going through the stuff you're going through. So add all those extra layers to it. So when you did have to pick up and move at that age, was there resentment or bitterness to the situation? Did you struggle with that at all?
I don't think there was. That's a great question. I don't think there was resentment or bitterness. Maybe at times there was. Is the selfishness part of me kicked in at that age, at that adolescent coming into the teenager years? I think the biggest one was the struggle. There was a lot of struggle for me because I left all my friends. I was doing well in sports. I was, and then you pick it up and you're the brand new kid and you don't have friends and you're trying to make friends and you're coming into puberty and you're all these different things. And it's, I remember it was a really, really big struggle just trying to find my identity in a situation that was new. And then to top it off, at the time, Salt Lake's changed a lot, but back then it's very ethnocentric culture. Over about 50% of the population was very devout LDS, Mormon, and I wasn't raised. I was baptized at 8 LDS, but I never went to church. God wasn't in the home. That was more of like a formal thing to do, like a lot of Catholic kids. It's like you're baptized and that was just the steps of the process.
The influence of your grandparents?
Right, yeah. My grandma wanting to have, she was LDS and wanted to have God in my life. And that was, again, you get baptized when you're 8. That's just what you do as a boy. But when I moved to Utah, it's now it's everyone, is very prominent, devout LDS. And it's that just was all new to me. Coming in, didn't fit in with the traditions, the religion, and that was a struggle too.
When did it click for you? Do you remember when you actually started going to church and you actually started to maybe it started to click for you and you started to develop a community there?
Yes.
Did that happen for you?
So I tried to do it through church, and so again, my grandma encouraging me. My grandfather was very, very funny story. So he's Roman Catholic. He's from Italy. And my grandma raised LDS. She was like that classic Mormon pioneer, right? So my grandfather was your very hard traditional Catholic where he's like, hey, I don't care what you guys do if you want to go to church, but I'm not going to church. I'm raised a Catholic, born a Catholic, I'm going to die a Catholic.
They were separate.
They were completely
their
separate.
Religious path a little bit. Okay.
And even my grandma wasn't she didn't attend church every Sunday, but she was like, you need to go. This will be good for you. And she pushed me to go. And so I started going to church in the LDS church. And that was my first real introduction to God and in religion, definitely, because I was consistently going, involved in the youth groups. So that was probably right around 7th, 8th grade, and then was pretty much consistently going to church every Sunday throughout junior high and high school. And that's where, and I know I told you this, the struggle and what drove me away, and people who've heard my freedom message, what drove me away from God, what brought me to God and first influenced me to God was the Mormon religion, which was great to I felt, that was the first time I really felt God move me. I felt the Holy Spirit, right? But I think that was the connection to God, not the church itself, right? We talk about religion all the time. The strains of that, and the challenges of growing up in that, going through junior high and high school, is you can get a feeling that you're never going to be good enough to be in the presence of God. Because again, we talk about it all the time, and I personally dealt with that, and a lot of people have, is the challenge with religion is you have to do so many things to be worthy to be in the presence of God. And that, at the point where I was getting close to graduation, I was a baseball player in high school. That was my sport. I played football, but I was better at baseball, and I wanted to play college baseball. And at 18 in the church, you go on a Mormon mission if you're a male.
Tell me about that a little bit. So what, I've heard of that, but I've always been in the Christian denomination, so I don't know anyone who went off to do a Mormon mission.
Right.
So you're approaching that age. How are they preparing you for that, and what are you supposed to do when you're 18 and go off?
So you go through different parts of the church in the youth program where you would get different priesthoods, and you have to be worthy. You have to do so many things by the commandments, and avoid sin to the point that a bishop, which would be like our equivalent to pastor, would deem you worthy. But the overall thing is a male growing up in the Mormon church is when you turn 18, it might be 19 now, you're supposed to serve a 2-year mission. They want you. That's what they believe God's calling every male to do is go build the church. And so you'd serve a 2-year mission. They'd tell you where it's going to be. You could be anywhere in the world.
Do you have a choice?
No, I don't. I still don't think they give you a choice. They may in certain circumstances, but for the most part, you didn't have a choice. You receive your calling, and they say you could be going to Ethiopia or you could be going to Anaheim. And that would happen. I've had friends and even family members who have done their missions. It's been Costa Rica. It's been domestic. It could be anywhere. But that's normal course is at 18, 19, you do that. And so anyway, I did not. That was a big struggle. My grandma wanted me to go. My mom wanted me to go. They still supported me, but I know the decision was really, really difficult for them, was they were disappointed. They wouldn't openly say that, but I could tell. And, friends I had, supporters and leaders of the church, still supported me, but I know they were hoping that I was going to do that. And I wanted to go chase my dream of playing baseball. So I didn't go on my mission. And that was a difficult thing to do. Again, saying, okay, asking myself, hey, well, I won't be worthy to be in God's presence now. I didn't go on my mission.
I was going to ask, did you struggle to even step foot in a church after that?
I went a little bit, but I started falling away from God. And I think the real reason I fell away from God is I just never felt like I was going to be worthy. I was never going to be worthy in His presence. And so that really started me on my journey away from God and not making any room for God in my life after that, because I just felt like I was never going to, no matter what I did, I was never going to be worthy enough. So at that point, the decision, that I made, and I think a lot of people make, is when you feel like you're not good enough to be in God's presence, you go as far away from God as you can. And because you're like, well, screw it. I'm not going to get there. Why work this? So I just led a life to say, hey, I'll just be a good person and live my life that way, and not knowing that, hey, that's not what God intended for you to do, and that's not really what God wants and who God is. But I had to find that out.
Okay, so you go through college following your baseball dreams. Did you have MLB dreams, or was college kind of like...
College was it.
For you?
College was it. It ended early with an injury, and so I didn't finish the college. I know.
I'm sorry.
And so I stuck with it, graduate college, get my first job, moves me out to LA. That's where I met my beautiful wife.
What job were you pursuing?
So I just did a sales job right out of college. Still didn't know. So any kids out there, if you get into college and get through college and you don't know what you want to do or what you want to be, that was me. So that was fully me. So
What'd you sell?
Sales, Black & Decker and DeWalt. So I started in power tools.
Oh, okay.
And my wife had started, she went to University of Nebraska, but she was a Huntington Beach girl, Southern Cal native. And we were on the same team, and we started just hanging out a lot, and friendship developed, and then the friendship turned into more, and then I chased her and forced her to marry me. That's what I said.
Well, tell me about that. So her name is Sandy.
Sandy.
So
she's the better half.
When did you know though that Sandy was the one, and you were going to chase her down? Was she playing a little hard to get?
Yeah, she did. She did it. I think she thought we were friends, and then soon I felt like, hey, I want more than a friendship here. So that's when it was probably like within 3 months of seeing. I just knew that, hey, I think I really like this girl, and like her more than a friend. So it was interesting. That was awesome. That was, obviously one of the greatest things in my life, and moments and decisions. So.
When did you guys get married? Yeah. Did you get married near Huntington?
2003, San Juan Capistrano. So I chased her all around California. We had separated jobs, and about a year later, I had left the company and pursued another career, another company. And she was in San Diego. I was in Northern Cal. I chased all the way back to get close to her and ended up in San Diego around 2001, 2002. And we were married in 2003. So.
And then you
awesome.
guys have your beautiful son, your beautiful daughter a few years later. And this is such an interesting part of your story to me because it's absolutely tragic. Your mom ends up passing away in 2016, was it?
Yep, just right about then, yeah.
And her funeral was almost like this turning point for you in your faith.
Yes.
So can you walk us through that story?
Yeah, it really is a good story. I think every one of us knows those moments in our life where God's interacted. God's talked to us, whether we're far away from God at that moment in our lives or close to God. But this was one of them. So my mom had finally passed with her battle, lived a great life. And what I love more than anything is she found God. And I know without a doubt she's up there in heaven, which is amazing. But we're at her funeral. And at this point, Shay, my oldest son, who's now 16, he's a sophomore, and Reese, my daughter, who's 13, and she's a middle schooler in 7th grade. And they were really super young, obviously, much younger. But we're at the funeral, and at this point, Sandy and I, we've not gone to church. Sandy didn't grow up with really a church influence or going to church other than the major holidays at Christmas and Easter. Great family, ideal. I mean, her family is unbelievable, mom and dad, but there was just no real God in her home, right? And then I had ran away from God after my college experience, like I talked about. And at my mom's funeral, my uncle was up there and he was talking. And oddly enough, my uncle was the one who baptized me when I was 8.
Oh.
But my uncle, who I always looked up to, kind of like an additional father figure in my life, stood up and said, to the point, I can't remember every single word, but I do remember the statement. He said, "I'm just amazed how many people can't make room for God in their home." And I still get shook by it because it just like hit me, Sarah, like right between the eyes. I'm like, that's me. He's talking to me. God's talking to me. We've made no room in our lives, in our home, for God. And so we get back from my mom's services, and Sandy and I are talking, and I just, a very deep conversation. I told my wife, I said, Sandy, I don't want our kids to grow up without God in the house and knowing God. I know as crazy as my situation with religion was on me, I still felt the presence of God and got that experience to have the Holy Spirit and know what that felt like. I knew what the Holy Spirit felt like.
How did she respond to that? As she didn't ever have that
She
relationship
agreed.
with him.
Yeah.
Oh, she agreed.
She was like, you know what, we do. And she's like, this feels right too. And we do need it. She didn't want them to go through living in our home and not knowing God or having a relationship. And then we had some very, very dear friends who go to Coastline. They're the ones that encouraged us to go to Coastline, Tony and Amy, and they brought us here. We're like, well, it's right by our house. Let's go check it out. And this is about 8 years ago, and it was just incredible. I mean, everything felt right about it. Yeah.
So walk me through that first day. You arrive at Coastline. Did you feel greeted? Did you feel welcomed?
Oh.
And you come in, Pastor Aaron speaks, or we have our amazing worship team. How is that? Which is very different, right? The way we worship and stuff is very different than
Very much.
what you were used to growing up.
Very much.
So just walk me through
Yeah.
like what you felt when you were experiencing Coastline that first time.
I think one of the biggest things that it felt just right, natural, comfortable. The only thing that was different for me, and I tell this to anyone who hasn't been to a Christian church that's looking for God, and I just had this conversation with a dad just a couple months ago. I said, hey, the biggest thing you're going to have to get over is everyone standing up and singing at the beginning, and their hands are up. Because you're not used to that, and a lot, like, if you've never seen that
Right.
before, it could come off a little bit like, oh, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
As you're sitting in the back. And I laugh about it because I'm the first person with my hands up, and I love worship, and I'm singing out loud, and I'm a terrible singer now. But that was probably the only part where I was just like, okay, this is kind of different, new, but the message Pastor Aaron, what he had to say. I also, as I talked to the men at Coastline and the people that have been such a great influence on my life, I think what really separates when you found a church is when it's over, how many people are hanging out? How long are they hanging out after the service versus like just jumping in their cars and peeling out of the parking lot? And at Coastline, even at that first one, not knowing anyone, people coming up and introducing themselves, and you're talking to them, and just the conversations are just casual, natural, but everybody you could tell wanted to hang out longer after church was over.
Totally,
and
yeah.
I wanted to come back for more. Sandy wanted to come back for more. And we did. And we got baptized together like not too long after that first one. And that was one of the greatest moments of my life, was being able to be baptized with my wife and know that we've accepted Jesus and starting a relationship with God. And I'm just, the other greatest moments of my life haven't happened yet, but they'll be when my son and daughter make that decision and get in the tub. The challenge is, it's like they've got to make that decision.
Right.
And not just say, hey, this is what you do, like it happened with me. I want that needs to be them making that decision to accept Jesus and get baptized. And I think I'm confident that'll happen. But when it does, I know it's going to be like the highlight. It'll be the highlight.
There's nothing like it.
I'll lose it.
Oh, yes, you will. So will everyone else watching you and watching that. I know, right?
Getting choked up right now.
Right, the thought of it.
Thinking about it.
Oh, well, I cannot wait. And I hope I'm there at service that day
Awesome.
or that same time when your babies take the dip. So now, just how has Coastline supported you, not only your growth and your walk in faith, but up to everything you're doing now with our local high schools.
Right.
And this amazing fellowship program, FCA Fellowship of Christian Athletes, that you've now been a part of. How has Coastline supported you through that and basically helped get you to the point of where you are right now and what you're doing?
It's been instrumental, I think, with Coastline to finding Coastline as a home brought me back to God. God never leaves us; we leave Him, and that brought me back to restart, give me a rebirth with my relationship with God and Jesus. And that walk just in them encouraging me to just go deeper. And I think the biggest thing that Coastline's done for me is just to always encourage and support me to go deeper in my walk and offer those opportunities to do it. Between small groups, I've been able to meet some great men that have been just unbelievable supporters for me in my journey, that have encouraged me to push me. I remember when I'd done my first small group, I attended my first small group, and shortly after, we needed a leader for a small group, and Mark McBride and Gary Chapman, they said, Chad, you need to lead this. I'm like, I'm not ready to lead. I'm still like, I couldn't recite a verse right now.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm just figuring this out again. And they're like, you need to do it. And in between Pastor Aaron's messages is saying like, hey, this is the right time, get involved, take a step, like continue that step, go deeper. And I did it. And then I'm leading a small group, and then I'm attending Freedom. And I won't go, people have heard my Freedom story, or some have, but my Freedom story was, everyone was like, you need to take Freedom. And I'm like, do I? I feel pretty good. This is like, I'm rolling, I'm getting deeper every day. I feel like I'm going deeper, and things are going great. And I'm like, I really don't think I do. And then I said, okay, I'll take it. And I took Freedom, and that small group there is what really encouraged me to take that next step, not just break the chains of what I didn't really know was holding me back. But
isn't that the crazy part of Freedom?
It is.
Is all the things you don't even realize are affecting your life today, that you think you just tucked away or moved on from in your life, and you go through that.
Yep.
So you were able to break some of these.
And that was forgiveness of my stepfather for everything he had done, to everything he'd never been a part of my life or my kids' lives. And so the biggest thing is, I didn't realize what damage that was doing to me, to my wife, and my kids, because it would come out in anger. It would, there'd be moments where I'd be angry, not knowing why I was angry, but deep down it was that, like, it was something that I didn't realize those were my chains, and I had to forgive, but also understand that, hey, Jesus forgave everyone. And if I can't forgive, how can I accept it? Like, how does that make sense that Jesus forgave all of us for all of our sins and sacrificed himself and God sacrificed his only son on the cross, right? But I can't forgive this man. It's like, I need to forgive him, not for his sake, for mine and my relationship with Jesus. And that was the biggest thing with freedom. And my group at that point also just took me, so I'm going deeper in my walk with Jesus there. But it was also hit me that, I'd been coaching for a while, coaching football, and I always wanted to bring my faith into football. And it's tough in a public setting in California. Christian private school, different story. But if you're doing anything in a public football venue in California, don't say God.
Right.
We can't force that on anyone. We can't encourage you're always walking like a slippery slope or hiding what you truly believe. And you want to share that with everyone. We need to be sharing that with everyone. We need to step up and do that. And so, but my freedom group, Sonny was in there, and Dustin, all these amazing people, Mark leading it, and Sonny at the time was going to take his club baseball team to Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I said, I want to do that with football. And I don't know how it's going to work, but I want to do that too. Sonny he's been a huge influence for me too when it comes to sports and integrating into our faith and bringing God into it. So that's just, go on these tangents and long stories, but there's so many ways.
No, but that's so cool because there's your key right here at Coastline. The guy who can help you connect to what you want to do, what you're aspiring to do and dreaming of doing is connect your faith to your football. And here you are at Coastline with a man who's already who's leading the way and showing you how to do that.
Exactly.
That's the priceless connection.
And I think I had to write a couple things down that just hit me.
Yes.
As I was praying and saying, hey, what things, just stick out to me? I'd say what I've learned in just being here at this short time with Coastline, I call it a short time, 8 years, but that's really been my journey back to God, is that one thing I know now more than ever through these experiences, you never know when or where God's going to show up. You just don't. And so be open to that. And when he does, lean into it, all in, go all in, because there's a reason for it. And he shows up, as you know, in so many different ways, like we've talked about with your personal story. He'll show up when you least expect. You don't know where or when it's going to happen, but he'll show up and you'll feel it. And at that point, it's like, to me, it's like, that's what I say is like, you need to show up. And that's going all in on it. And it's been awesome. I love it when those times happen, and they happen all the time, random times.
Sometimes they're uncomfortable, and it's hard to take that leap of faith and show up and commit all the way.
It is.
But that's almost how you know it's a calling from God, is when you wouldn't normally do it yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
When I wanted to go to Fellowship of Christian Athletes, I just lost my job, and I was a VP of sales at the time. The company was really struggling, and they had to make cuts, and I was a heavy cost burden for them, and knew it was kind of coming with the way the company was performing. And it was just about a year and a half ago, I lost my job. And that was the moment where I really felt like God was saying, hey, this is happening. Everything happens for a reason. And God was saying, this is the time that you need to jump into Fellowship of Christian Athletes. This is the time that you need to serve me more than you've ever served me. And do what was on my heart, which was God was telling me, hey, you need to reach coaches and athletes, and you need to step out, and you need to bring them to have a relationship with God and Jesus, and a growing relationship. And that's what was the turning point. And as I've been on this year and a half, to go to your point of the struggles and being tough to do, there's a lot of people that I talked to in my circle that I just knew were like, Chad, you're crazy, man. You should be chasing your career, and you're at that point in your life where, make as much money as you can and all these things, but it leaves a huge hole in your heart. And you realize that you're chasing something that's just doesn't, at the end of the day, satisfy. You're chasing false idols, right? Mm,
yes.
And but starting was tough, because I knew not everybody was going to accept my decision and feel the same way I felt about it. And I had to get over that and be like, that's okay. And it was huge, the men at Coastline, the encouragement they gave me to keep doing it. and saying, hey, like from Dave Barth to Sonny to Gary to Mark to Pastor Aaron to so many, it's countless. Chad Orr was huge for me to say, yes, go deeper, because the devil's going to pull in every day. Even today, like, it never stops. I mean, even, as I try to pull things off that I'm trying to do with FCA, I'm like, hey, this isn't going to work. This is going to be too tough, or maybe I should just give up. I have to remind myself, man, that's what the devil wants. That's what the devil wants you to do.
Chad.
And I have so many experiences of, if you just push through, like what you will see on the end will just show you how great God is. And I have so many examples of that. And it is going to be difficult, but most of the time it's like, the devil wants you to fail. And he wants you to stop. And it's going back to what Pastor Aaron always says. That's the devil talking to you. That's the way he can hurt you. He can't hurt you physically. He's going to hurt you with his thoughts, with lies, and it's going to be in your head. And that's where he attacks you.
That's how you know you're onto something good. If you are trying to follow this call from God and the devil keeps throwing these like speed bumps, these roadblocks in your way, you got to push through them. He's trying to stop you from doing something great.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Thank you for being under this spotlight. Thank you for being out there in our community, going after our kids, spreading the kingdom, going after our coaches who are taking care of our kids and being mentors for them. That's such incredible work, and it gives me hope for this community, this North County community, which we really need it.
Yes,
Chad.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for that. I have a question actually about, spreading your faith in this public school setting, because my husband is a hockey coach, and he's always kind of thinking the same thing. Like, I wonder how I could, be a good influence to these kids and, share my faith here and there. Right. But he's wondering, like, what about those atheist kids on our team who absolutely exist? Have you ever received backlash from kids themselves or parents? Anything like that in the times that you've stepped up to do this? You're smiling.
I did.
Yes. Okay.
One's recent, really recent. So there was so with FCA, one of the things that I wanted to do was sponsor a 7-on-7 team. So in football, in the spring, the kids play club 7-on-7. And there's a middle school team where the two coaches, it was a perfect scenario because I didn't have time to coach it, but wanted to encourage the coaches, would give them the resources they needed between devotionals, athlete Bibles, everything they needed to get these kids on board, socks, logoed out with FCA football. And the coach, was a great FCA supporter. He was all on board. And he's like, oh, this is going to work out great. I know these parents, they're Christian kids. They'll love that we're praying before, and, hooked it up with another FCA supporter who was another high school coach who was going to help with the offense. And so we have everything together. And the coach calls me up one day after the first practice, and he's like, hey, I need your help. I got something. I didn't realize one of the players' dads, he came up to me, and like all the parents were on board with this. I told him ahead of time what we're going to be doing, and we're going to, have a Devo, and we're going to pray, and we're going to invite the other team that we're playing after the game to pray. And one of the dads was like, hey, that's cool. My son's not doing that. And as he dug, he didn't realize the father was an atheist. So he called me up asking my advice, and I'd say, here's my advice. Number one, he doesn't have to pray with us, but we're going to pray as a team. We're going to pray as a team together, and anyone who wants to join can come pray with us. Just like the other team, we're going to invite them to come be in prayer. They don't have to be in prayer. And the coach is like, well, I don't want to isolate this boy, and I don't want to isolate his dad. I'm like, I understand that. We don't want to isolate him. We won't isolate him. In fact, we're going to love up on him as much as any of the boys. But we're not going to force him to do something, but we're not going to give up what we want to do and how we want to share God on this field because of one person. And the dad didn't leave the team, thankfully.
So he was open to that. Like,
he just said, my son's not going to participate.
And so you met him halfway where it's like, oh, well, there's no punishment or penalty for that. Fine.
Yeah. But soon I saw that in the young man, he was joining the prayer circle. He's wearing the FCA gear that has a cross on it. And again, I think like that's again where you never know what God's going to do to show up. But going back to your husband's point, I said this to the coach, and I'd say to Chip is like, when I told the coach, I said, Coach, do you ever think the reason we're doing this could be for just one one person.
Oh,
Because it's truth.
yes.
If anything, when I heard that scenario, I said, this is exactly why God has me doing what I'm doing. This one child is the reason to do this.
The shepherd and the 100 sheep.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
What the one
Never
goes,
stop
oh
going
my
after the
gosh,
sheep that's
Chad.
lost. So that's just an amazing one. I mean, there's just a few other FCA ones where, I have one of our big players at the high school that I've known a relationship with, his father for a long, long time, reached out to me. And he said, hey, I know you're involved with FCA. I've never, I kind of grew up Jewish, but I've never really had God. And just started asking me everything about, church, who would you recommend? And I recommended a church by his house. He ends up going there, texting me and saying, hey, it was different. The music thing, I told him, gave him forewarning. Yes. I said, watch, that's going to come. Don't let that scare you. Don't, you'll be past that. So he sat in the corner at the church and he was like, he texted me back and he's like, hey man, I just want to let you know, thank you so much, man. There's been a hole in my heart. And he's like, I don't know. Yes, it was a little bit different. He's like, but something happened there. I'm going back next week. He's been back every week. Another coach I invited to help with an FCA tournament. I didn't know his walk with God, but I knew he was a great man. I invited him to help me support funds for my ministry. He calls me every week and leaves me messages. I'm in the Word every day. Wasn't doing that before. And he was golfing in our tournament, but he saw the impact of all these great men that were like giving their time, their money, their treasure, talent to God, and it moved him. And I just talked with him this morning, and to see his journey, it's like you're like, man, this is awesome. I also, a real fun thing is doing this I do a weekly coaches devotional every Friday morning at 6 a.m. And this was like the big rock I wanted to do when I came to FCA. I said, this is what I want to do, because I saw a coach of Pacific Lutheran University do it for the state of Washington, Spencer Crace. And he invited me to one of his calls. And you have have the high school football coaches in San Diego on this call every morning at 6 a.m. Friday. It just started. It's starting small. But to get these men, because if you think about it with high school football, one coach could have an opportunity to influence in just one season between 150 to 300 plus kids, depending how big the program is. If you take just San Diego County, that's over 10,000 kids that have an opportunity. The coach has the opportunity to influence, not just in the game of football, but we hear it all the time, life. But then also lead them to a relationship with God, to be able to have that influence. If they can't say it, they can model it. And that comes through. God comes through in their life. So this devotional is starting small, but it is growing. And my vision is that this will have like 40 coaches on it. It'll continue to grow. But it's awesome. 6 a.m., these coaches can take it in their car. They can take it onto the morning workout. They can do it. It'll go every week all the way into the season, where right before Friday Night Lights and the football game and the high school stadium is about to turn on, they can get their mindset right and say, hey, God first that day. Not football first, God first, 6 a.m. We're on, and set their mind right for that day leading those men. And but just so many incredible impacts that go back to, like, you never know when God's going to show up. So whether you have the atheist on the team who's the non-believer, I'd say pray about it, and you'll know what's right. But that's the person that God is exactly calling on you. Like, that could be the exact reason you're doing something, that as much time as it takes, how big it is, how difficult it is, it could be for one person. And that's what God's going for. And I have to remind myself that. I'm trying to reach so many, I'm trying to make such a big impact or lead such a big effort. But hey, it could be for one person that God's trying to reach.
Right. It reminds me.
It needs God.
Yes. It reminds me of, like, I don't know if it's Pastor Aaron who said it, but it's like, you can't change the world, but you can change your world, right? The people that you interact with. And then it also reminds me of, Ed White, who takes the stage for Operation Christmas Child, and has said that the one thing that struck him was he was in church and heard a leader say, who's going to heaven because of you? So I'm thinking of that as you're telling me these stories, and I'm just like, ding, Ding, ding. So I am just so excited for you and all the lives that you're helping.
And I have to say one more story.
Yes.
And it's not me. God's working through me.
Tell me.
You said it earlier.
Right.
So we got to go back to that.
Okay,
You're like,
go.
it's not me. When I was complimenting you on like how cool it is that you're doing this podcast, you said, that's God. And it is. I'm just the instrument. I have to remind myself that too. All glory to God.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all to
100%.
him, through him, and he's just working through me. But yesterday, so FCA, I talked about this in church, but FCA's got a club on campus at La Costa Canyon, and it had not been on campus for like 4 or 5 years. And they meet weekly on Tuesdays at lunch, and they'll have 20 to 40 kids there. Our youth pastor, Cooper's incredible. He's there every single Tuesday, unless he's in another huddle that maybe at Carlsbad High or San Marcos to show presence there. But he shows up for these students every week and supports them. I try to go every couple months between work when my schedule permits and jump in there. I have to tell this story because it's important. I think I mentioned to you when I first met you and we were talking, it's easy to go to the inner city urban areas of San Diego and understand the challenges that those kids have and the demons and like what they're fighting through. But what I've learned is like what God called on my heart was to coach football at a public high school, is that these kids, even in our bubble where they're entitled, they have everything they need, my kids included, they don't go without, they have they're hurting. They're dealing with demons, whether it's alcohol, it's drugs, it's suicide, mental illness. It's just different problems, but they're all dealing with problems in any area you go to. Poor, middle class, upper class, does not matter. My story was a poor story. We have kids hurting in this area big time that need God that are in a middle to upper class situation. But I saw one specifically firsthand yesterday was a student gave their testimony. So they'll come up, give a testimony and lead the devotional. This young man, so brave. And I've seen this every time I go to this FCA club. You'd be so incredibly impressed with these kids and how they give their testimony of God and want to be there at lunch when they could be anywhere. But what hit me too was yesterday so one of the student athletes gives his testimony. He says, hey, in 2022, I was really dealing with a lot of like depression and I really struggled. In 2024, I wanted to take my life. I choke up because you're listening to this.
Yeah.
You're like, the kid's 16, 17 years old. And then he's like, I found my youth pastor, came to God, and saved my life. And I get emotional about it because there are so many kids that are dealing with that need God. And just like I needed God as a young kid, sorry. It's that's so recent that yesterday I had to tell Sandy when I got home, I was like, man, you would not believe this. This was so incredible, the bravery, because I know kids in that room have had similar feelings or may even have similar feelings right now that needed to hear his story.
And it's so scary to share that.
Absolutely.
And they, most kids wouldn't share that. And
so vulnerable. You
so vulnerable.
Completely put yourself
And
out.
you're right to have one kid stand up and say it. It struck the chord and it struck the heart. Someone was speaking directly to other students in there. Oh.
And I'm so glad he did. The power is I think it's so beyond your comprehension that kids at that age would be in such a place that they would even contemplate like saying, I can't go on, that I need to like end it. I think there's a lot more. I know statistics show it. I think if anything, our youth need God now more than ever. They've always needed God, but just with how depression is so real for them, they're dealing with so much, and it doesn't matter where they live, what they come from, they're dealing with a lot. And so if anything, I mean, it's just really excited, feel like God has put that on me. That's what I'm here to do, is work with you. That's my calling. That's what God wants me to do. And for Cooper, it's unbelievable. Like, we were looking at each other and just saying, man, how powerful that was. And just how grateful that my first time really meeting this student, and just how grateful I am that he has God in his life, that he's found God and didn't go and do something that no one would have wanted. So anyway, just had to share that as that final
Thank you.
piece, which is just, to me, so freaking cool, man.
That is incredible. That is
God
powerful. And I want to know more about FCA as I've been hearing about it. So this is opening up, peeling back that curtain of what impact you guys are actually having. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you guys for watching another episode of Coastline Connections. I cannot wait. Pastor Aaron and Amanda are going to be back next week with another grace-based living podcast, and you don't want to miss that one. So thanks, Chad.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Sarah.
My pleasure.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the Coastline podcast today. And let me tell you, if you ever have a question for myself or my wife or any of our guests, or would love to hear a show about or a question about, email us at podcast@coastlinechurch.org, and we'd love to respond to you. Now, before you sign out, please like, subscribe, or follow whatever device you are on or platform you are following us with today so that you never miss an episode. I'm grateful to get to do this together. Thank you for joining us.